If Netflix's Daredevil didn't get you hyped up enough about the Marvel Cinematic Universe carrying on into TV, Jessica Jones seals the deal. I just got done binge watching all 13 episodes of the first season on Netflix, and I am thoroughly impressed. I didn't think it could get much better than Daredevil because I love that season. That was a really gritty, down to earth, like very well acted and the most realistic take out of all of the Marvel Cinematic Universe interpretations I'd seen at that point. And then I see this, and even more so, just raises the bar and gets me more hyped for, honestly, more Netflix based stuff, more stuff building up to the Defenders. Jessica Jones is well worth the watch. It is intriguing. It is fun as hell. It's funny as hell at times with this really dark comedic sense about it, and is really captivating with regards to character, with regards to character development, with regards to following this lead who is such a damaged, emotional wreck of a person. But you love to kind of watch her work through shit and hopefully triumph in the end. Very much along the same line as Daredevil, the acting throughout this series is really, really good. Kristen Ritter, I'm not really as familiar with what she's done before. Let me just really check here. She's been in 27 Dresses, Confessions of a Shopaholic, a lot of like rom-com stuff, Gossip Girl. She was in Gravity, I guess. Okay. Veronica Mars. For this being like, I guess her really first like breakout role as a lead, she carries this series very, very well with her performance. And it is just so awesome to follow this really bitter, drunk, surly, and very distant character. And to kind of see how she gradually works her way out of those little phases and becomes a little bit more heroic, I guess. Even though towards the end, she really is just, even though kind of, big spoilers here, good triumphs over evil in some way, shape, or form by the end of this season, she's still very damaged, still very vulnerable, and is still very reluctant about taking on the role of a hero. And you totally get it. You are totally with her whole journey throughout this entire arc that Jessica Jones goes through. As I've mentioned before in reaction videos to the trailers and everything like that, I was somewhat familiar with the source material. I'd read a couple of issues of Alias by Brian Michael Bendis back in, I guess, was it early 2000s, mid 2000s, when the Max imprint in Marvel was still taking place. So I knew a little bit about the character's history, and I knew that adapting her to the MCU was going to be vastly different from what they did in the comics. As I've mentioned in previous videos, she had very close ties to Spider-Man in a way, whereas she went to the same school as Peter Parker, was there when he got bit by the spider and everything like that. And I knew for the sake of this universe, a lot of that stuff and a lot of her like superhero background was going to be altered for the sake of the MCU. But there are some pretty cool references to the source material. When she first like displays her powers, and very much in the same way as Daredevil handled the origin, you're given glimpses and like flashbacks and things like that. When she first like debuts her powers, saving people, and wants to kind of seriously pursue the idea of being a hero, her sister by adoption, Patricia Walker, Hellcat, I have been informed by people on the comments in my reaction videos. I originally thought the character was Carol Danvers, but no, it's Patsy Walker, but she hates being called Patsy. We'll get to her in a bit. But she like throws around the idea of like, you got to wear a costume, you got to wear a suit. And in these flashbacks, she shows her the original Jewel costume that Jessica Jones wore in flashback sequences in the comics. And, it's a very gaudy, very super comic book superhero type of outfit. And that's a nice little Easter egg, a nice little reference. And she never actually wears it, of course. She never really actually becomes a full-fledged superhero. She's just kind of this person with a super strength and abilities that goes about helping people in, the dead of night, helping people, saving them from muggers and things like that. And that's how the story kind of goes about its business. But I kind of like those little references. Enjoyed how the show was still building on the MCU without being, again, overly gratuitous like I feel Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. can be, even though it makes sense for a show like Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. because of the fact that S.H.I.E.L.D. is on a mainstream network, where if you're trying to get the appeal of the MCU out there to a broader audience or a bigger populace, of course, references to the Avengers, to events from the films are going to be more, heavy-handed, I guess. They're going to be a little bit more on the nose. Again, what they do in this show is they reference events that have happened in the movies, but those aren't like taking center stage. With Daredevil, they refer to the invasion and stuff as the incident, instead of like saying, "Oh yeah, the Chitauri came down from the heavens and blew up Midtown." It's very subtle with its references to bigger events that have been taking place, such as the invasion, such as the fact that when she meets up with Luke Cage in here and they talk about like, "Oh, we're both like super strong, but we're not nearly as strong as the big green guy." Like, that's all you need, and that's fine. And at one point there's like a kid running around in a Captain America costume for like 2 seconds. You know what? That's cool. It's building on this whole universe that is acknowledging the existence of larger than life heroes, but at the same time downplaying it quite a bit, keeping it very down to earth, gritty, and real. That's what I really appreciate about so far all of these Netflix series pertaining to Marvel, is that the action is still very eye-catching and very spectacular, but at the same time, it's not a special effects like smorgasbord. The fight sequences in here, when you've got Jessica Jones and you've got Luke Cage, who are both super strong. Luke Cage is nigh invulnerable with his unbreakable skin. The effects that go into portraying their powers are very practical and in camera. Like, it's just elaborate wire work, stunt work to just show them chucking someone halfway across a room. It's nothing too distracting in the realm of CGI. And the same goes for Kilgrave, for David Tennant's character, the Purple Man from the comics, is that his power, the terror behind the power, and the magnitude of his abilities isn't something that can be shown through elaborate CGI. I mean, you could very much attempt to do it, but it would just come off as very distracting and take you out of the experience of watching the show. The way they do it in here, where basically he would just be giving out commands to people and influencing what they do, forcing them to do things they don't want to do. And just that interaction in and of himself, the way he portrays those commands, the way these people react to those commands, that on its own is effective and chilling. You don't need, like, say, I'm sure if this was like a big budget production, they'd somehow show like how, I don't know, his pheromones, or the way they describe his power in the series is that it's like a virus. I'm sure there'd be elaborate CGI showing the virus at the sub-molecular level or whatever passing on to someone. And that would completely be like a 3D sequence or something like that that would take you out of the experience. I'm thankful that they don't do that they don't somehow dehumanize, the character in that sense. Even though he is a very inhuman, and not inhuman in the Marvel sense inhuman, but just straight up a sociopath. Like, he's sadistic as hell. I can't believe this is more plausible to me as a rape survivor rapist relationship story than the movie I saw a few weeks ago with Rosamund Pike, which was about a rape survivor rapist and didn't involve superpowers. How is it that the villain and hero story, where the villain can force his intentions upon to people, is a far more believable premise than whatever the hell happened in that fucking movie. I'm not gonna get into a Return to Sender rant here, but the dynamic between all of the characters works so well, and even more so than I felt in Daredevil, because of the fact it doesn't feel like there's wasted character moments here. Whereas I think the one hang up I had about the Daredevil series was Wilson Fisk's wife, Vanessa. Even though I know she's a character who's sometimes referenced in the comics and everything like that, it just felt like that character really didn't have much to do. Here, every supporting character, no matter how big or small the role is given a very clear-cut opportunity to shine. And characters who I thought were going to be annoying as hell for me end up going through like mini arcs that ultimately redeem them in the end. From Simpson, who I think is the character Nuke in the comics. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I believe the character's code name or whatever is Nuke in the comics. Going from like this policeman who's being manipulated by Kilgrave to kill Trisha Walker at some point in the series, and then tries to like seek redemption, but he's just still so bloodthirsty and wanting revenge on Kilgrave that he wants to just straight up kill him and anyone who gets in his way, including his friends. At first, I thought that character, after I realized like, oh, he's gonna be sticking around for a couple of episodes, if not the whole series, he might get annoying. But then ultimately, he doesn't really grate on the nerves. He kind of won me over a little bit with what he was going through, what his belief structure was with regards to justice and eye for an eye, essentially, and doing away with, ultimately, like, being very pragmatic in his approach and being like, dude, this dude can move cities with just a simple command. He can completely turn this world topsy-turvy by just telling us to make it topsy-turvy. If that's your power, yeah, very much our instinct would be to kill that guy. Get that guy out of the equation. How can you contain someone who can literally not be contained because he can just talk his way out of anything? I bought into that argument a little bit. I could see where that character was coming from, and even when he goes to extremes and violent extremes at that point, at the same time, I'm like, okay, well, this is clearly this character's journey. I'm sure they're going to bring him back and do even more with him. The same can be said for Carrie Ann Moss, who plays who plays the most pragmatic, stone-hearted defense attorney I've seen in a television show or movie in a while. She is just ruthless when it comes to being the winner in the argument. From the professional standpoint of defending this girl that Kilgrave manipulated into shooting her own parents, to just being cold and calculating in her divorce with her wife, essentially. And that takes a really fucked up turn halfway through the show. Even then, when ultimately, like, this character, I'm like, I don't know if I can fully get behind her actions in this series. In the very end, in the last episode, like, she wins me over yet again, because she's seen shit. And that's the other thing I like about this show too, is that when this is a show dealing very much with the idea of powers and the abuse of power, the skeptics who are, even in a world where you have giant green men, guys in flying armor suits, and a space god with a magic hammer, there are still skeptics. I kind of enjoy the charm of that despite all the crazy shit the world has witnessed in the Marvel Universe, there's still people out there being like, meh, we need proof still. We need video evidence that this dude can control people's minds. Which makes sense to a degree, but also it's just kind of this fun little quirk that I think the Marvel Universe has always embraced. And to that point where even after she's experienced some shit, it still takes her a while to kind of fully embrace this idea and be a little bit more proactive about it. That's a fun thing to watch. It's an interesting journey to experience with the characters. Even like really annoying as shit characters, like the twin sister of Jessica Jones's neighbor or whatever. Who spoilers? I should have mentioned this earlier. There's gonna be spoilers throughout this entire talkie. One of her neighbors ends up committing suicide because Kilgrave wanted him to do it because he was jealous, I guess, that the guy was kind of infatuated with Jessica. This dude's twin sister in the first half of the series is very kind of annoying, just an annoying neighbor who's always yelling, and her and her brother have a weird like relationship that's referenced from time to time. Where every once in a while I'm like, okay, that's weird to say, but after that incident happens, you sympathize with her grief a little bit, and you sympathize with her trying to let go. You sympathize with a heroin addict in this show. One of my favorite characters in the series so far, Malcolm. Like, this poor guy is, without giving too much away, like, he starts out in the series as a fucking wreck, and through the help of Jessica is able to kind of, steer clear, but he's still haunted and damaged by what's happened to him. And you just feel so bad for this dude, because whenever this guy is on screen, his performance is like, the look in his eyes, like, I want to get out of this shitty situation as quick as possible. Like, Jesus, there's a dude out there he can do whatever he wants. He can make me jump off a building and I won't even bat an eye, or I won't even question that order. It's like, my next door neighbor is a drunk, super strong, bitter woman, and like, she could give two shits about me, and my neighbors are insane, and it's like, and he's trying to run a support group for all these victims of Kilgrave, and it takes his toll on him because he's done some pretty shitty things up until this point, and then he's had to hide and keep to himself. And you feel for this guy. You're like, dude, I totally get it if you want to just hop on the next bus and leave this town, but out of like some sense of like obligation and honor and wanting to be a decent human being, like, he ends up being one of the most sympathetic characters in the show. And he has one of the best moments at the very end of the series. It's like I said, it's very well acted throughout the entire series, but it's just kind of a reassuring thing, kind of setting up what they can go with for the next season or so, in which Jessica at this point has been through an emotional gamut. She's just a wreck. She's just sitting at her office desk, and the phone's ringing. It's all these people wanting to be potential clients of hers, like saying, help, we need help, because at this point, people know her name and everything like that. And she is just so distraught. She's just deleting messages. She is numbed up to the whole experience at this point, and she doesn't want to have anything to do with helping anybody. And he comes out of like the kitchen and everything like that, and just quietly is just like, Alias Investigations, we're here to help you. And he like gives her a look, and it's like a tracking shot out of like the shattered glass of her office window, or her door window, and he just gives her this look. Is like, right, where he, despite all that horrible stuff we've had to endure, we're still here to help people, right? Like, that really speaks to all the humanity that the actors and the script seem to find in each episode. Through what the background between Jessica Jones and Patsy Walker, which Patsy Walker in and of herself is a very strong parallel for Lindsay Lohan and her family in this series. I found out it's like the shitty background that we know Lindsay Lohan had with her family. But what if Lindsay turned out okay in the end? Like, I like this character. And this character was played by Rachel Taylor, I believe. The last thing I saw her in was Transformers, the first one. She is miles better in this than she is in Transformers. And I don't blame that on her at all. It's like, it has to deal with the material given. She's given so much good stuff to do in this than she did in Transformers as a hacker, I guess. There's a lot of foreshadowing to kind of the super heroic role she could take on in the future as Hellcat. Like, it shows, like, in the very first couple of episodes, it shows that she has, like, bruises and stuff on her body at times. And you're kind of wondering, like, what the fuck is that? What's going on? Is she being, like, abused? What's going on? But then it turns out, like, she just spends her nights training her ass off in, like, self-defense, in, not Muay Thai, but in some fighting style. And she's always, like, there's a really cool scene where she's got a trainer in, like, her private dojo in her apartment. and the trainer is constantly like just cocking a gun and pointing at her head, and it's all about like how fast she can disarm him. She's like, no, I heard the click of the gun, too late. It's like I got to be faster. And then like they just go over it again and again and again. She's always like tackling the guy to the ground, or he's always like trying to, you know, make her lose her footing and stuff like that. Like it's very much setting her up for a more active role as a superhero or vigilante, I guess. Even though she's very, very active in this series already, and the connection between her and Jessica Jones as foster sisters uh, gets very well established throughout the series run through their interactions together. They work really well off each other. Through flashbacks to when they're kids, and Jessica first comes to live with her and her bitch of a mom, who, yeah, this is about the only unsympathetic character I could find in the series, because I'm just like, they show flashbacks, because Patsy Walker, Trisha Walker, she hates being called Patsy, uh, grew up in the style of like a Lindsay Lohan or a Miley Cyrus. Like she's got like a Hannah Montana-ish type TV show when she was younger and everything like that. And her mom's like this overbearing, really mommy dearest level of psycho, controlling guardian. Like there's a scene where she's forcing her to throw up for eating pizza. And she's hovering over and be like, you shouldn't have had those extra pieces, honey. And she's like forcing her head down into the toilet. I'm like, my heart broke when I saw that. Mainly because these child actors are just as good as their adult counterparts. But also like that, that's fucking terrible. Like, I don't care how they try to redeem this mother in later seasons. I'll never get on this this character's side, because the actress is too good at playing a stone cold hearted bitch, and that is just terrifying and horrible. Even though it is under the Marvel brand, this show does not pull punches. The interactions between Jessica Jones and Luke Cage, the intimate interactions, are pretty steamy. Very intense. Not overly explicit, but I mean, when you have two superpowered beings that find they're very, very compatible with each other, yeah, it gets pretty hot and heavy at times. Oh, speaking of, it's like I like Luke Cage in this, Mike Coulter. I can't wait to see what he does in his own solo series. They set that up pretty well. They set up kind of the tension between him and Jessica very well with his backstory, and I think the actor Mike Coulter handled it very well. He's a very cool, collected type of dude, but when he has to like show a volcanic eruption of emotion, like if he's being controlled by Kilgrave, for example, and he's being forced to try and fight Jessica and things like that, it's very well done. Like I said, I can't wait for his own series where he can be just as intense and possibly team up with Danny Rand. Who knows? All right. Let's get to my favorite part of this series. And that is, of course, David Tennant playing essentially a more dickish version of the 10th Doctor. Kilgrave was awesome in this show. And by awesome, I mean chilling, intriguing to watch, almost as intriguing as D'Onofrio's Kingpin. At times sympathetic, but then just to see the sheer amount of sick fun that this character has in making other people miserable was, I'm ashamed to say, kind of entertaining. And I'm not saying like, oh, I totally justify the things that the character did or anything like that. What I was mentioning before about how do you convey this power to make anyone do anything you want? It's all in the delivery of Tennant. He sells this idea of mind control very well. It's not one of the hokey, like, I'm going to make you do things, and like really he's so casual with his commands, with his life or death commands that he inflicts on people, that you get the idea that this character has been indulging in this ability for several years, has become so disillusioned with the idea of human decency that even when he is trying to be heroic at times, because he wants to impress Jessica, because he's got a sick infatuation with her, obviously. Even when he's trying the hero gig for like 30 seconds, it still seems so unbelievably like non-sincere. He's just like, oh, okay, I see the merit in this hero thing, I guess, whatever. And I love that about Tennant's performance in this, and is that the only time you see the character really invest in any kind of seriousness or any kind of stakes, I want to say, is when it involves Jessica directly, because you believe that this guy is just so drunk off his own power and so unhinged that the only relationship that he would genuinely show genuine affection in, or his idea of affection, would be with this woman who just fascinated him when he first met her and got her under his spell. At the same time, whenever he just casually tells people to do shit to themselves, when he's just looking through like a magazine kiosk and things like that, and the vendor's like, hey, you can't just be taking those. You can't just be like taking a bunch of those without paying. He just casually looks over. He's like, throw your coffee in your face. And the dude does it, and it's like they're screaming, and he just casually trots away. Like, that's a horrific thing, and it's well done, well executed, but it's kind of like his just complete like casual notion about hurting people is a little intriguing to watch, I have to say. He does a lot of demented shit to people, or he has people do demented shit to themselves. Whether it's using people as like carrier pigeons for his messages to Jessica, in which he has an 8-year-old, this adorable little 8-year-old with a lisp, come up to her and call her a bitch to her face and say shit like, "Oh, that girl's gonna rot in jail for shooting her stupid ass parents dead," or whatever. Like, this is an 8-year-old saying this. Is like, and the look of horror on Jessica's face in response to this, like, I can't believe he's making an 8-year-old say this to me. When he does, there's so much demented. I don't want to give away too much because it really is kind of fucked up to see what he is willing to make people do. And at no point does he really turn purple, but I was okay with that. You know what? If you're going for a more realistic take on the the character doesn't have to be purple for me to buy that this is the Purple Man. I mean, he's in purple clothes all the time, and I'll buy it. So whatever. Yeah, his performance it's not quite Hannibal Lecter. There are times when sincerity comes through in his performance that I never bought with Anthony Hopkins as Lecter. There comes a point in the series where Jessica's actually living with him on her own. I mean, of her own free will. Like, he can't, at this point, he can't coerce her into doing anything. And it could have gone into goofy Hannibal territory. I mean, Hannibal the movie. It could have gone that way with regards to the relationship between Hannibal and Clarice. But it doesn't. Like, when he's talking to her, when it seems like he's genuinely trying to make an effort to be like, you know what, I could be a nice guy for you. I could be, I feel like I understand you more than anyone else ever could. There are points where you're like, I kind of buy that a little. And it's not because I'm being persuaded by mental powers or anything like that. It's because he's just that good. He's just that kind of charismatic when he wants to be. But when he lets his character off the chain in a way and just shows what a sadistic, ravenous dog he really is, that's equally as intimidating and as effective as when he's just playing like this demented admirer of Jessica. And yeah, like I said, all the stuff he puts people through throughout this series, like the elaborate commands he sets up for people at times, just shows like how good of an actor he is and how well written of a villain Kilgrave is. I'm hoping, without getting into too many spoilers, I'm hoping this is not the end of that character. I would really love to see this character come back, but throughout that all, like I said, his dynamic with Jessica Jones, Jessica Jones' dynamic with Trisha Walker, Trisha Walker's dynamic with Simpson, and so forth and so forth. It's like all these little character building moments throughout the series really make this a very effective piece of television. And like I said, I'd say a little bit more engaging than Daredevil even. Because like I said, there were some things in Daredevil I'm like, okay, well you got to tell like a standard superhero tale to a point. Even though I love I love Daredevil. This felt very much more of a crime thriller, along like I said, along the lines to an extent like Silence of the Lambs, film noir detective story. The the angles, the lighting, the music was very pulp, sleuthy type of music that you would expect for a detective type story. I think it's got its own style and it's very well done and is very effective at showing just how even such a damaged and wreck of a person like Jessica Jones can aspire to be something more. And even though it delves in really dark shit and really dark themes at times, the fact that it can have that really well-rounded resolution for the character to an extent, I feel makes it a very engaging and worthy binge for you if you got the time for it and got the interest. This actually breezed by a little bit faster than Daredevil for me. I can't explain it. Like I was able to sit through 8 episodes in a row yesterday before I called it quits and went to bed. And then I woke up again this morning and finished off the last 5. Like it went by really quick, but I was still very much engaged in everything that was going on. Check it out now. It is a fun watch if you have been a fan of the Marvel Netflix stuff so far with Daredevil. This is just the most natural progression from that, and hopefully we just keep building and building more with awesome characters and hopefully a good team up in the end.